idea is we use HTML for defining the contents of the page and the structure of the page. And then we will use styling and CSS to style the page, to change the visual look and feel, to change how it looks. Okay, so the whole idea here of CSS is to separate the content from the presentation. So we have the contents defined in HTML and the formatting and styling defined in CSS. Okay, so let me just introduce the idea by just going to a Word document. Let me just open this document. Just as an example, this is a small example document. And you can see here, I organized this document into multiple sections, and then the section has a subtitle and then paragraph and so on. Okay. Now, let's say if I want to change all these titles, make them bigger font, and make them blue, as an example. Select. Thank you very much. That's what I want to say. So whenever I want to change a style of a particular content, what is the first step should I do? I select what I want to style. So here I select this. This is what I want to style. And then I start applying the styles to them. When I say applying the style, for example, one style property I can change is the color. I can make it blue, or I can make it red or brown or whatever. So first step is select, and then I start changing the properties. So here I change the font family. I don't want this, I want Tahoma or Times New Roman, or I can start changing the style. I change the font size. I'm making it 20. Yeah. I change the, I don't want to be underlined, no underline, or I can do underline. I can make it italic. You get the idea. So the first step in any styling, I first select what I want to style, and then I start changing the visual properties. What are examples of such visual properties? Color, font size, decoration, position. Thank you. I could make it in the middle, justified on the left, on the right, and so on. That's another thing I can do. Yeah, I can also, and the styling is so rich, like your imagination is the limit. Here, this very, very basic document, and I'm sure you have seen very, very sophisticated, stylish documents. So, but the basic idea is the same. You select something, and then you start changing its visual properties. Exactly the same thing in CSS. Exactly the same. So let me show you now the general syntax of CSS. So CSS syntax, when you define in CSS, you are defining basically rules. CSS is a set of rules. You are defining a set of rules. And these rules, this is the basic syntax of these rules. You select something. So the rule has two parts. You have a selector, and then you have declarations. So the selector is maf'ul bih. This is on the element on which the style will be applied to. And then on the right side, you have declarations. These are in the form of property value, and separates a semicolon, property value. So that's basically the general syntax of CSS. I select something, and then I start changing its properties. So in this case, what I'm selecting in this example, header 1. What this means, what this selector really means. What does it tell the browser?
Header 1 has a color of blue.
Select all header 1s in the page. All the header 1s in the page, I want you to select them. And then what I'm telling the browser what to do? Change the color of these headers to blue, and change the font size to 13 pixels. You get the idea. So now, when you only want to learn CSS, what you will need to learn, just from this line. What are the two major skills you need to learn? How to select elements from the page, and what are the various properties that you can change. That's what CSS is. Yeah. Now, the various properties that you can change is a big ocean. So many things you can change and so many possible values. But you need to understand the basics and the principles, see some examples, see some common properties that people usually change, and then leave the rest to discover as you move forward in your career. That's how you will do it. Otherwise, you will be stuck in CSS for many months to come, and you will not reach the bottom of it. Okay. By the way, if you want to make a comment in CSS, just take a text and put it between these two delimiters, slash star, and then close the star slash, if you want to put it as a comment. Okay, so now that we know the basics of CSS, the basic syntax, you know we have an HTML page and we have CSS. How do we combine both? Or how do we kind of include CSS in HTML?
3 ways.
3 ways, yes. 3 ways we can do it. So let's do it together through an example super quickly. Example, super simple example. And here I will just put a header 1. Okay. My header 1. Okay. Now I want to style this one. I want to change the visual appearance. Let me first show you the default visual appearance. This is the default visual appearance that Chrome has built. I assign my style to the style attribute. In here, I start changing the properties. For example, here, color. Color could be, let's say, blue. I can change the, let's say, font size. Yes, thank you. Font size, let's say, larger, or I can put it as a 26, for example, 26 pixels. What else? What else I can do? Okay, font family. Okay, you get the idea. So this is the inline style. I define it by assigning my styles to the style attributes. So if I go back here and refresh, you will see this style has been applied. This style has been applied. Okay, I changed the color, the fonts, the font family, and so on. By the way, this is an inspector, very, very useful. As a web developer, you should be familiar with it. We will kind of discover it as we move forward. But if I just, let me just close it. If I just go here and see inspect or Control-Shift-I, I get here. And then I can see the style. If I want to see the style for this particular header, I can click this selector here, click this header, and it tells me exactly what are the styles. Some of them are built in. I don't touch them. Some of them are mine. I define myself. I can, if I want to debug it, I can disable. I can. This is the I can disable these styles. This is the default. This is my styles. I can reapply them. Okay. This way of doing styling is what? Inline. Inline. This one is a terrible way of doing it. Never do it. Once you find yourself doing it, just give a smack to your hand and don't do it. Okay. Another better way of doing it, I'll put it here under style. And here, when I do it under style, I have to first select what are the lucky element that will, on which my style will be applied. In this case, I want to apply them to H1, and then I start defining my style as a name value pair, and it's recommended to have each property in its own line. Property colon value, property colon value. This is not too bad. This is called an internal style. Okay, exactly the same behave, except it's much, much better. We never use inline style, except for demonstration or learning, but for professional work, we don't do it. Professional sites, we don't do that. We don't even do it here. This is not very good. We should do it outside. We just remove it altogether. And typically, most people will create some folder, typically called CSS, and inside this folder, I create another file that I will call styles, typically. And then in here, I will put my style definitions. Outside the HTML, and keep the two totally separate. Very, very important. I should separate the content from the presentation. And this is the power of CSS. The two are totally separated. Of course, I have to link them. So HTML is aware of the CSS that will be applied. So how do I link it?
Go to the HTML file.
So I just go to the head, and then I'll go here, link, and then I will say here, this link is related to style sheets, and this is where the style sheet is coming from. It's coming from CSS plus styles. Yeah.
That's it.
So basically, this external file, CS defining all my styles, is now linked with my HTML document through this tag link, the link tag, and this is the syntax. Which way is the recommended way of integrating CSS with HTML?
In an outside file.
In an outside file and linking it this way. Why is it so? Why is this is the best way of doing it? Yes, you are reusing these styles in multiple pages. It makes it easier to maintain. If you want to change, you change in one place. When we say reusing, you are not duplicating the efforts and wasting the time. And more importantly, you are preserving consistent style. Very, very important. Every page, when you go to a website, like a professional website, every page should have the same style. Otherwise, it's very annoying and it's very damaging to the reputation and the image of the organization. This is very, very serious, by the way. In QU, for example, nobody is allowed to put a page on the web without approval from a special team that approves every website that goes online. And one of the things they approve is the styling. Styling must be consistent with the rest of the page, because the style communicates an image of the organization. Yeah. And by the way, the good thing is, as us as developers, like for example QU, they invest, they get some web designer, they pay him, and they will create a style, and that style you will use for all the pages. That's here in QU. You are familiar with this, so let me just come on. Engineering QU. Here is the style sheet. Can you see the style? This type of color and so on. So there is some overall style for all colleges, but every college has its own style. If I go to business, it has its own style. If I go to law and to arts and sciences, its own style. So there is some overall style for all colleges, and each college has its own style again. And there is some kind of inheritance between the two. Consistency is very important, and one way to achieve the consistency is to kick out the CSS to a separate file and then link it to whenever you need it in different pages. That will give you reusability, ease of maintainability, and more importantly, consistent look and feel across all the pages. Style, never ever. Inside, never. And the external is the recommended way. Okay. The reason why you should be familiar with this, because you might see some examples, some tutorials, they use inline or they use internal style just because of the learning to make it fast. But in real professional development, styles are always outside. That's basically the message. Moving on, this is the best way. So let's start with the selectors. How do we select elements from the page? Here I already defined the style. How did I select the element on which this style will be applied to? By using the tag name. Thank you very much. So what is the first way of selecting elements? By tag name. This one is straightforward. Whenever the browser sees this particular tag, it go ahead and apply the style that is associated with this tag name. The second way of doing it, which is more interesting and more common, you can see here, let me select this guy. A word, you can see here, if I drop down this one, what do we see here?
Multiple different styles.
You can see what's the name of this style? Intense emphasis. This one is strong. This one intense reference. Intense quote. Can you see this one is very interesting? What are these styles? Who defined these styles? Who defined them? Yes, they are predefined. The word people, they gave them a name. That's it.
They specify a name.
They define the style and they name the style. Now, us as word users, what do we do with these name styles?
Apply.
We apply them to our document content. You get the idea. So in CSS, you can do exactly the same. What can you do in CSS? You can create a style, give it a name, and then you can apply it to any element you wish. Okay, so let us try to do this. So in here, what I will do here, I'll create a style. By the way, if I want to create a style, this is my main header. So the way I create a named style, I give it any name I wish, something meaningful, and then I proceed it with dot. This is just to tell the browser, don't try to break your head. This is not a tag name. This is what? This is a named style. Okay, this is a style that has a name. It's a class. It's basically a named style. And then in here, I will tell you, browser, what formatting you should apply when this style is applied to some element. So let's try something. So for example, the color is tomato, okay, and the font family Verdana, for example, and what else? Let's make it 30 pixels, for example. You have a name style, yes? You have a name style. Inside it, what you define in this style, your imagination is the limit, okay? Depending on your artistic taste and your artistic skills. This is an art more than a science, okay? How you will make it look nice. That's it, I define the style. This style has a name, yes? Now, how do I apply this style? So I go to my page, and basically, for example, I might have here a paragraph, just as an example. Style. All I do, I'll put here class property, and in there, I basically put the class name that I defined in my style sheets. You can see here, this is styled paragraph, and this style is a named style. Now, the good thing about this named style, I can apply it to any element. It's class main header. If I refresh, see this one is styled using the style I created. So what I mean here, I can apply the style to any. Okay, now if I define some style here, let's say here is color, I will make it blue, and this one I will make it green. Just the body of the whole document, I made the color blue. Yes. Now let me just go to the document here and add, let's say header 2. Yes? So what do you think? What will be the color of header 2?
Blue, but everything else is tomato. Yes.
Yes. Okay, very good. So header 2 will be blue, but header 2 did not have a style on its own. There is no style in header 2 that says blue. But how come header 2 became blue?
Because body has a style.
Because basically header 2 is a child of body. So body is the root element. So if I apply style in the parent, this style will get propagated to the children. That's why we call it cascading style sheets. So if you apply style to a parent, this style will be propagated to the children, but the children, they can override that style. Yes? So that's basically the idea. If you apply style to the parent, the children will inherit it, but the children can override, they can have their own style. I'll make this one background color. And I'll make it, let's say, light crayon, for example. So all the elements, because all the elements will inherit this color. So you can see here, I'll refresh, all of them have this color. But I can come to header 1, I can come to header 2, and I can say background color, and I'll make it, let's say, yellow. So all elements of the body inherit this crayon color, except this header one. When I refresh, it has a yellow background. So the header one has overridden this background property, and we are overriding the style that was inherited from the parent. So here is body. All the elements are within the body. So that's what defines the relationship. It's not whether it's header 3. Header 3 is, what is the parent of header 3? The body. It's not header 2 or paragraph or anything. So what I mean by this, have a look at this. What I can do here, this is even more interesting. I can do here a div, and I can put all this within a div. Yeah. Now I want to give this one, just to show you another type of styling, I can give this one an ID. I call it intro, for example. So this div, I give it an ID, and I will call it intro. What I want is this div, only this div, I want the background color to be white. For example, this div, I want the background color to be white. So what I'll do, that's another way of defining styles. I can style that particular div with, what did I call it? Intro. And basically, I want the background color of that intro to be white. Yep. So now, you see intro. What does intro has? What are the children of intro? We can find out from here. Let me first refresh this guy. You can see here is the head. So you can see the intro has this background white. So it's the whole div, it override the color of inherited from the parent. Now, what is the parent of header 1? Is div. And the grandparent is body. So basically, the closest parent, the properties of the closest parent win. Background color yellow, it's coming from this rule, H2. I defined a specific background for H2, and it's coming from this style. Now, and then we inherited, have a look at this, inherited from body. What did we inherit from body? Two things.
And white.
We inherited the color blue and this light, but this light was overridden by this one. Yes? Here are the main 3 ways I can select elements from the page. I can select them by tag name. And here I'm telling the browser, whenever you see this tag, apply this style. I can define a named style, and then I can apply to any element by assigning the style name to the class attribute of the element. The last one, not very common, is if I have some element on the page and that element has an ID, I can target that particular element by ID. I can style that particular element by ID. Class is the most common and the highly recommended way of doing it. Why? Because it's unusable. Once you define a style, you can reuse it anywhere you wish. Now, ID, this is very rare. And if we have a page and we have one particular element, its style is very, very specific. For example, let's say we have a paragraph, and this paragraph is an alert. I want this alert to be, let's say, I want to position it on the top, and I want to make it red, and I want to make it, let's say, bigger font. This feature does not fit any other elements. Of course, I can make it a class. It will be even better to make it a class and then apply it. But in some quite rare cases, for some reason, I really want to target that particular element and only that element. Then I can use the ID. But you're absolutely right. You can achieve this by using the class.